One of the most underrated ways to stand out as a candidate is to ask great questions at the end of your interview. And this is no different with Ulta. In today's video, I'm going to give you 5 great questions that you can ask at the end of your Ulta interview that'll make you stand out as a great candidate. Now, this is video 4 in a 5-part interview series, and watching all of these is basically designed to give you the best, most unfair advantage ever so that you can land a job with Ulta. So if this is the first video you are seeing, make sure at the end of this, you watch the next video. I'll pop it right in the screen right here. But after that, go and watch the playlist because there are 3 videos I've made prior to this that are excellent and should help you land your job at Ulta Beauty. All right, let's get into it. Now, real quick, the way it works most interviews is you're going to be asked a bunch of questions by the person interviewing you. And then at the very end, they will say, all right, do you have any questions for me? And I can tell you as someone who has been in recruitment for 14 years that if you go, no, I don't have any questions, that is viewed very negatively. It's that you didn't prepare, or you're not super interested in this opportunity. You're not taking it seriously. Great candidates have great questions that they will ask. And that's why it's really important that you have questions when you go into your interview. All right, so let me give you some of the questions that I think you should ask in your Ulta interview to come across as a great prepared candidate. Now, the first question is, what does a person need to do in the first 90 days in order for you to consider this to be a successful hire? This is a great question. And it's a great question for a few reasons. One, it lets you know what their expectations are. Anytime you're going to accept a job, you should know what their expectations are. Are they realistic? Do you think you can achieve them? Have they thought them through? These are all really good. The other thing that's nice about this is it allows the hiring manager to vocalize their expectations and walk through them. And then for you to accept that and go, okay, great, and feel good about that. It's a very strategic question. It's a great question to understand their perspective and what the role looks like, especially in the first 90 days. Very powerful. Now, the next question is, what does onboarding and training look like for your team? This is a great question because retention starts at onboarding. How a company onboards you and the training you receive early on has a significant impact in how long you will be with the company and how successful you'll be. So it's really important to hear that from the hiring manager's perspective. Do they have a good plan for you, right? That is really important. For me, I always want to know that. If I'm going to accept another job, which is a risk, I want to know they have a good plan in place. And quite frankly, I want to know what that plan is so I can get ready for that. And if I do get the job and I am hired, I know what to expect in the first couple of weeks of me working for the company. It's a really great question. It shows that you are thinking about success and then what follows success. Very strategic. It's another great question to ask in the process. Next question is, how would you describe your team's culture? I love this question because it gives you just an insight into the team, right? The team you work with, the hiring manager you report to, these are really important when it comes to job satisfaction. If you work with a terrible team, with a terrible job, like boss, you are going to have a terrible time. That will not be a good job. So I like hearing this from the hiring manager's perspective. Being a manager means you are responsible for guiding the culture of your team. What is that team like? What is the working environment? Their fingerprints are all over that. So allowing them the opportunity to explain what that team is like, super critical. Now, this is another question I like to ask, and I think it's a great question for Ulta, but it's, what do you like about working at Ulta Beauty? Or what attracted you to working at Ulta Beauty? Something like that. What's really nice about this is it allows them to speak about their passions, okay? In a conversation, just in general, interview aside, people tend to have a more positive recollection of how that conversation went the more they speak. So allowing the hiring manager to speak means they're going to look back on your interaction more positively because they got to talk a little bit more and they get to talk about things they're passionate about. Now, specifically, if they say, oh, I love working at Ulta because of blank. Well, if you decide to write them a thank you email, which I would recommend if you have their email, you can actually recall that. And you can mention what they said in your thank you email as something that was meaningful in the interview to you. So for example, your thank you email might sound like this. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate you answering my questions and you walking me through the process at Ulta Beauty. One thing that really stood out is you mentioned blank, and this is where you share whatever it is they told you. And then you'd end with, looking forward to hearing back from you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at any time. Your name. Great question, great tee up to write a meaningful thank you email, and it is really going to elevate you as a candidate. The next question is, what are the skills and behaviors of the most effective members on the team here at Ulta? I like asking this because I want to know what they think matters. What makes a good Ulta team member? Is it their knowledge of skincare and beauty? Is it their temperament? Is it their sales acumen? What is it that matters to them? This is a great question to ask really early on in the interview process. Like if you ask it at a first interview, then you can use that interview information at every subsequent interview, right? If they say friendliness is really the big differentiator, then you can respond by saying, that's great to know. I think that's really important in a customer-facing role. In my past roles, I've always tried to be really friendly with customers because I feel like it elevates their experience. Right? What you just did there was you said, what's the most important thing? They said, it's this. And then you go, that's me. Powerful way to reinforce that you're a good fit for the role. But then on top of that, if you have a second and third interview, you want to make sure that you're sharing that you were a friendly person. And being a friendly customer service, person is part of like how you operate. It is a great way to understand what makes a successful person in the role, but then also use that information to your benefit. Now, this question is the closing question, and you ask it at the very end. And it's, do you have any questions or concerns about my ability to do the job? It is a great question because if they have concerns, they exist whether you ask this question or not. But let's just say they say, no, I have no concerns. Be like, great, I really enjoyed speaking with you today and I'm really excited to pursue this opportunity further. You're just letting them know, good, because I'm interested. Every hiring manager wants to hire someone who is interested in their job. On the flip side, if they go, well, yeah, I do have some concerns. I wish you had more experience doing blank. Then you can politely rebuttal. You can say, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your candid answer there. I don't know if I did as good a job as I could have explaining some of my experiences. I actually did have experience doing blank at blank. I did that for 3 years and I actually consider myself quite confident at blank, right? And you can literally address their concern. And if you didn't ask this question, you'd never be able to do that. But it's one of those things where you have to make sure you are not defensive, because if you come off defensive, that is not a great answer and it can actually harm you. Now, one of the things you can also do to come off as a great candidate is demonstrate in your interview that you are a good culture fit and a match for the team. It's why I made this video here. This video here is different ways that you can show you're a great culture fit for Ulta to increase the likelihood of you getting a job. So I am done here, but I will see you at the series finale right over there.